Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live, Republicans have clinched a narrow majority in the House. What they'll be able to do with control of the chamber and what it means for President Biden's agenda. At least 7 states from New York to Wisconsin are under snow alerts, with 4 feet expected in some parts. New York's governor has declared a state of emergency, while officials are calling it a crippling, life-threatening storm that will impact parts of the Northeast for days. And more deaths in Ukraine after another barrage of missile attacks. Investigators in Poland are also looking into the deadly missile explosion there. The growing questions about who is responsible. But we begin with Republicans officially winning enough seats to take control of the House. The Republican majority will be slim, but it will likely be enough to block much of President Biden's agenda. ABC News Deputy Political Director Avery Harper joins me live now, along with ABC's Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill for more on this. Now, Jay, given this majority win by Republicans' current Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is expected to announce a decision about her political future today. What are you listening for there?
Yeah, her team has indicated that announcement will certainly come today. My colleagues and I have been talking to lawmakers here on Capitol Hill to get some sense of what she will say. Nobody really wants to get out in front of Speaker Pelosi when it comes to her announcement. Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, her number 2, said that he's not going to make any comments until the Speaker does. That is Speaker Pelosi entering the Capitol today, that footage that you're watching. She's wearing her characteristic white pantsuit. That is something that she has worn before. She wore it when she announced that the House would draft the first articles of impeachment against former President Trump. She also wore it for a State of the Union at one point. So it's an indicator that there is certainly going to be a pivotal moment for Nancy Pelosi today. Again, when that announcement comes is unclear, but it comes on the heels, as you mentioned, of the House being called for Republicans, a stronger showing for Democrats than expected, certainly a better showing than they had anticipated, not the showing that Republicans wanted, but that prompts Pelosi's announcement today.
Now, Avery, Pelosi's been in Democratic leadership for 19 years. So if she steps down from that post, what does that mean for the Democratic Party?
Right, well, it's a whole new chapter for the House Democrats if that does happen. She has been at the helm of the caucus since 2003, and whoever fills her shoes, should she decide to step aside, will have big shoes to fill, because her opponents and her allies alike talk about the fact that they believe that she's a political mastermind. Whoever takes her place will have to have vote counting skills, they'll have to have negotiating skills, they'll have to have fundraising skills as they are heading into a Republican majority.
Now, Jay, what does this slim Republican majority in the House and slim Democratic majority in the Senate mean for getting legislation through Congress?
Well, it means you're looking at a divided government for the remainder of President Biden's first term in office, obviously. I've been speaking with GOP sources. Their plan was to pass messaging bills in the House that would force the Senate's hand or try to thwart the Senate at every turn. So you're likely to see machinations of that going forward. But primarily, it also means that Republicans will be relying on those investigations that they've continuously promised that they would roll out if they took the majority. There was a press conference earlier today announcing the opening salvo, in essence, of investigations into Hunter Biden by the people that are presumed to be leading the House Oversight Committee and the House Judiciary Committee come January, when Republicans are officially in the majority. There will also be investigations into the Afghanistan withdrawal. There are likely to be investigations into the administration's treatment of parents at school board meetings and everything else. So that will be what you see Republicans lean strongest into, plus those messaging bills that are again designed to force the Senate's hand, force the president's hand. We know the first messaging bill, Republicans have said, will likely be on the border.
Now, Avery, House Republicans had held a press conference earlier talking about how they plan to launch investigations into Hunter Biden, into the exit from Afghanistan, into the administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. How is this expected to play out?
Right. Well, retaking the majority gives Republicans the power of subpoena. It gives them the power to set the agenda in the House and in its committees. It would be hard to believe at this point that the Biden White House and the Biden administration hasn't been taking measures to prepare for this, as it has long been expected that Republicans would take the majority in the House. And so we're just going to have to wait and see how it all plays out.
And we're hearing now that we expect to hear from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi this afternoon at some point. We, of course, will be listening closely for that on what she may or may not announce there today. Jay, what do we know going into those remarks? Because I know a source said that Pelosi actually went home last night with 2 versions of a speech.
Yeah, so there are expected to be remarks. We just got reporting from my colleague Rachel Scott, Capitol Hill correspondent. The House floor opens at noon, as you know. Speaker Pelosi, according to those talking to Rachel, is going to speak around 12:10. So that is when we're expecting those remarks now, Diane.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Avery, thank you as well. And at least 7 states from New York to Wisconsin are under snow alerts today. Buffalo, New York could get as much as 4 feet. Our Matt Rivers is there.
A winter blast of lake-effect snow taking aim at western New York. Cars navigating the elements, some drivers needing an assist from tow trucks.
Travel will be near impossible during the height of the storm.
Plows already dispatched, trying to keep up with the conditions as snow has been hammering the area. Drone video capturing numerous tractor trailers that pulled off Interstate I-90 to wait out the conditions and crammed into this rest area parking lot. Now, Buffalo bracing for an historic storm. Officials calling it a, quote, crippling, life-threatening system that will impact the region for days. But the worst is yet to come. Forecasts calling for potential record snowfall measured not in inches, but in feet.
These are the type of storms that really put people's lives at risk.
New York's governor declaring a state of emergency, closing part of Interstate Highway 90 to commercial traffic starting later today. Hundreds of thousands lie right in the storm's path. It all comes almost exactly 8 years after an epic lake effect event dumped more than 5 feet of snow in the region, killing 13 people.
All right, Matt Rivers, stay warm. Thank you. And Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z is tracking the latest forecast and the deep freeze for millions across the country. Hi, Ginger.
It is not just Buffalo. So many places from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, all the way into New York are going to be dealing with this lake effect snow event, which could be 3 to 5 days by the time we're done with it. So along that Ohio and Pennsylvania state line, they've already seen more than a foot in some spots. Those lake effect snow bands will keep setting up as that cold air slides over the relatively warm lake water. What you see here are the winter storm warnings and advisories, the lake effect snow warnings. That's where you're going to start to get into the heavier totals and the 3-inch per hour snowfall rates. I'm telling you, the visibility in that type of snow band is impossible to drive in. And so that's why we will see extreme impacts in the areas you see highlighted there, Interstate 81 and then 90. Look at Buffalo here, snow up to 4 feet. The snow there around Watertown, 1 to 3 feet. And you go back to Mackinac, maybe down into Kalamazoo, you could end up with another 6 to 12 on top of whatever you've had already. That Arctic blast is responsible for this. It is just a continuous push of cold air. And how cold will it be? Friday morning, there are actually freeze alerts as far south as Georgia. And remember, just 1 week ago today, I was standing there in a hurricane. This is a very abrupt change to winter for so many folks across the nation. Diane?
All right, Ginger Z, thanks for that. Russia has fired a new barrage of missiles at Ukraine. Officials say at least 14 people were killed in Dnipro, and more strikes also hit Odessa and Kyiv. This is President Zelensky's doubling down on his claim that Russia fired the missile that exploded on Polish soil. Foreign correspondent James Longman has the latest.
A large explosion rocking Dnipro. The strike is caught on this video posted by officials. The damage part of a wave of Russian airstrikes across Ukraine that have killed at least 4 people. The latest barrage comes as investigators on the ground in Poland are looking into the missile explosion that killed 2 people Tuesday. US, Polish and other NATO officials all agree it was likely from Ukraine.
This explosion was most likely the result of a Ukrainian air defense missile that unfortunately landed in Poland.
It may have come from Ukraine, but NATO partners say Russia bears the blame for the explosions.
Those innocent people would not have been killed if there had been no Russian war against Ukraine.
But President Zelensky still says it was Moscow, telling reporters, "I have no doubt that it was not our missile." It fell just 5 miles into Poland Tuesday, following a massive Russian barrage across Ukraine.
I was here yesterday, so it's safe.
Meanwhile, at the recently liberated Kherson airport, local commander Konstantin shows us the airfield littered with destroyed Russian equipment.
This is the Russian bunker.
What he's doing there is making sure there are no mines. Russians leave mines absolutely everywhere.
But the war still rages. Konstantin raises his finger after he hears the distant thud of Russian artillery, and we duck for cover.
Now, what that footage shows is just how quickly you have to react here. From when you hear the thud in the distance to the whistle in the air, you have 5 seconds to get to cover. And it's worth saying, with so much of the infrastructure out across this country, because of Russian missiles, so many towns and cities don't have electricity, which means often they don't have air sirens. People aren't getting the warnings they need to get to safety. Diane?
So nerve-wracking. James Longman, thank you. And foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge joins me live now from Lviv, Ukraine, along with ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy for more on this. Tom, this is the largest barrage of missiles and drones Russia has launched since the beginning of the war. Millions of Ukrainians are now without power, possibly for days. So what happens now?
Well, this is unrelenting, Diane, from Russia, and Ukrainians are bearing the brunt right now. I mean, look, we were in a power station last week. We saw what one cruise missile can do, obliterating an area of that power station, cutting off the power to millions of homes. And Russia continues to do this. Today, we've seen more strikes in the south, in Odessa. We saw that missile strike in James's report in Dnipro. That's a central eastern city. And we're getting a really ominous warning tonight from a director at the main private energy company in Ukraine, who says basically Ukrainians up to now have been dealing with these rolling, programmed blackouts on a daily basis. He is now warning Ukrainians that they will now face prolonged blackouts, possibly for days instead of hours. And look, Ukraine's air defenses are working flat out. The US has given Ukraine high-tech equipment. 2 new NASAM systems are now in operation. But let's be honest, at the moment, all of the kit they're getting from the Europeans and the Americans at the moment is not enough to stop these waves of missile strikes, drones and missiles coming all at once. The air defense system just can't knock them all down.
And Tom, I can see it looks like it's snowing there. It's very cold, clearly. When you talk about power being out, you often think of the lights going out. But can you talk about the impact of having power out for millions for prolonged periods of time, as you're describing?
Well, look, Diane, in this country, generators are sold out, right? You go into schools, there are generators just to keep the power going so kids can learn. You know, then you think of hospitals and critical infrastructure like that. Again, generators are keeping things going at the moment. But, you know, people's lives are tough. You know, people are without power, without connectivity. The internet here often kind of goes down or drops down. That's a massive thing in all of our lives right now. So, look, Russia is trying to effectively terrorize the Ukrainian population, make their lives so tough as we just go into winter. We've had snow on the ground for the first time in Ukraine this season. And, you know, it's tough. But I think when you talk to any Ukrainian, they will say, and really this was probably one of the most powerful speeches from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president, in recent weeks or months. He kind of said, look, we can do without power, we can do without electricity, we can do without water, but we're not going to bend the knee. We're not going to succumb. We're not going to let Russia effectively take over our country. We are going to remain an independent nation.
Now, Mick, yesterday, U.S. Army General Mark Milley said the probability of Ukraine winning this war isn't high because Russia still has a significant amount of combat power. What does that mean for Ukraine at this point, and what would they need to change that?
So, Diane, I think what he's really telling everybody is that although we've seen great strides in this counteroffensive, taking back Kherson and Kharkiv and other areas, we shouldn't expect this to be over anytime soon. The further that the Russians have to withdraw and concentrate into certain areas, the harder those fights will be in those areas. So I think what he's trying to say is we should not expect this to be over anytime soon. Ukrainians have the initiative, have the momentum, but this is going to be a long, hard slog.
All right, Tom Sufi-Burridge, Mick Mulroy, thank you both. Coming up, abortion was a key issue in the midterm election. So where do things stand now with a divided Congress? We'll break it all down after this. Welcome back. With a narrow majority in the House, Republicans will likely be able to block a lot of President Biden's agenda come January. But what does it mean for abortion in America? ABC News senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty has more on that. And abortion has been a driving force in the GOP for so long. But every ballot on this issue put to voters in the midterms went in the direction of abortion rights, even in conservative states. So what does this all mean for where this battle over abortion rights goes next?
Well, that's right, Diane. I mean, this is something that we've seen in the polls leading up to the election. But the big question was whether or not voters would put abortion front and center over inflation, which they did not. We saw it as a close #2 issue, which was actually surprising to many poll watchers. But it did not dominate. So as you see on the board now, it's 53% of Democrats, or of the nation, of all voters, 53% trusted Democrats on this issue of abortion. So what happens next? The president is still going to veto anything that House Republicans could possibly try to propose, and it would be very unlikely to get through the Senate, which Democrats still control by a very thin margin. On the flip side of that is that Democrats aren't going to be able to, they don't have a filibuster-proof majority to push through anything. So right now, I think the issue is certainly just at a standstill.
In terms of messaging, some anti-abortion groups criticize Republicans for being too wishy-washy on the subject, not being forceful enough. So is it possible, despite the way all these ballot measures went, that Republicans will actually try to strengthen anti-abortion messaging?
You know, I think what we're going to see is them pushing this back to the states. That is a tested message that they've had. Say, you know, this is a state's issue. Let's have the states decide this. You know, we saw some governors in really, really red states like DeSantis embrace this idea of a 15-week abortion ban. That can pull in some support from independent voters. I think it's worth pointing out that that wouldn't stop the vast majority of abortions. 93% occur before that 15-week window. You know, I think Republicans are going to have a conversation on this because we saw that they were out of step with many voters on this. Most likely, though, you're going to see them try to avoid this issue or say, just let's leave it up to the states.
Now, in Georgia, the 6-week abortion ban has just been overturned by a Fulton County judge. So what happens next there?
So the Attorney General in Georgia has asked that the Georgia Supreme Court weigh in. They say that they are willing to defend the laws of the state, that voters have already spoken on this. The judge has said, well, you did this before Roe v. Wade fell. So you want to revisit this in a way that voters will watch, because now we're talking about abortion rights, whereas they weren't before. So I think this is going to be a closely watched case to be determined whether or not it gets all the way to the Supreme Court, where we have more conservatives who would likely support the state on this.
Now, exit polls placed abortion surprisingly high on voting issues, second only to inflation. So what does this mean for the future of abortion-related legislation? Should we expect to see more on that?
So, you know, I don't know that we're going to see it at the federal level. I think we might see it at the state level, but a lot of Republicans are not wanting to talk about this right now. They know that it's a losing issue. They know that 6 in 10 voters want abortion to be legal in most or all cases.
All right, Ann Flaherty, we appreciate it as always. Thank you. And a 10-year-old boy is speaking out after a stranger was caught on camera approaching him and trying to lure him away. The boy says he knew exactly what to do by remembering something his dad had taught him. Whit Johnson has that story.
I was scared and shaking, so I was thinking something really fast.
It's that quick thinking that helped keep 10-year-old Sammy Green safe during this frightening close call caught on camera in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Sammy, seen here, followed by a stranger on his way home from school.
She was talking about, like, I'm going to Wawa. What are you going to Wawa? What are you getting from Wawa? And she was like, where's your family at?
Sammy, a hall monitor at school, knew something was wrong and remembered what his dad told him.
If you're getting followed, don't trust them. Just act casual and go by any adult.
That's when he spotted a familiar store and hurried inside, making his way over to the cashier, 17-year-old Hannah Daniels. Sammy seen whispering in her ear.
I told Hannah, that she's been following me for a while. I just said, I'm going to act like you're my mom, and she said, okay.
And I just thought it was a regular interaction with a mother and his son, but the woman had stood in the doorway kind of hanging there, and I could tell she wasn't coherent.
Hannah calmly walks to the door, putting herself between Sammy and the woman, closing and locking it. The woman then walking away.
My first thought was just to make sure that Sammy was okay, and then he went back home to the people that he belonged with and his family.
Sammy's dad so thankful for how Hannah and his son handled the situation.
And then watching that video, man, I cried every time I saw it. I'm just so proud of my son for doing what he did.
Experts say Sammy did everything right.
He knew he was in a risky situation. He knew things weren't quite right, and he trusted his gut, and he went and looked for help. Children need to know that they can speak up. If something is making them feel scared or uncomfortable, they have the ability, they have the right to speak up to an adult, a trusted adult.
Such great advice from Dad there, and goosebumps to see that video. Whit Johnson, thank you. Coming up, Lizzo to the rescue. After a superfan reached out for help, we have details on the singer's special delivery and what that fan is saying now. Welcome back. Grammy-winning superstar Lizzo stepped in to save the day when one of her fans didn't know what to wear for a special red carpet event. The singer surprised the fan with a custom ball gown that you might recognize. Stephanie Ramos has more.
Okay, stop. This TikTok is for Lizzo.
This might be the best example of ask and you shall receive. Ariel Marie, a queer writer and poet from Atlanta, is receiving the biggest accolade of their career, being named to the prestigious Out 100, a list of impactful and influential LGBTQ people.
And there's nothing that I want more than to be able to be in New York in a month and accept the award. There's just one little problem. I can't find anything to wear.
But a brilliant plan came to mind.
I gotta ask. Can I please wear your dress from the 2022 Emmys? Please, it's my favorite.
Fast forward to 3 weeks later. We met with the Gumbo Yaya author in the Big Apple while they were getting glammed up for their gala.
Nice to meet you. I'm a hugger. You're here. You're in New York. You're here. Made it with the dress. I wanted to feel like Lizzo. I felt so excited to see it, and then it felt real.
And what a dress it is. After adding some jewelry and one last photo shoot, Ariel stunned us with the dress Lizzo sent, the one she wore during the 2019 American Music Awards, where she performed her Grammy-winning song, Jerome.
You look amazing.
Thank you.
Did you ever think that Lizzo would actually send you this dress?
No. I mean, I'm a stranger. Lizzo had no idea who I was.
Ariel sharing that even now, finding gorgeous gowns for plus-size women can be difficult and stressful.
When someone is in a body that's larger, right, than how we think they should look, we value them less. And that's true from fashion and pop culture.
You made it here. Lizzo made it happen. She gave you something to feel fabulous. What would be your message to Lizzo?
I keep telling myself, Ariel, don't be silly. It's just a dress. I'm really grateful because I think that everyone deserves to feel this beautiful.
Ariel says, like the Lizzo song used in their TikTok video, they deserve this.
Oh, she got emotional. Stephanie Ramos, thank you for that. Love that. I'm Diane Macedo. Do stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.